I'd like to start by thanking Professor Wu for inviting me to give a talk. It's unfortunate that I was unable to join you in Shanghai, but I'm grateful to be here virtually. My paper is less about artificial intelligence and the significance of quantum theory for the social sciences. I want to briefly present some themes from a recent book, Snapshots from Home, as a way of setting the stage for thinking about the implications of the parallel between quantum complementarity and Taoist yin-yang for the social sciences. Now, the book is a thought experiment that begins with a quantum argument from Niels Bohr and later Karin Fierke that the observer is always entangled with the apparatus of observation and measurement. Neither their position nor the apparatus is fixed, but continuously changing, and what is seen will be a function of one's position. This creates distance from claims indebted to classical physics that the world exists independently of us and that we're objective observers. The Taoist imagery of walking around a mountain makes a similar point. What is seen or not seen at any one moment while walking is a function of where one's standing, the time of day or year, and this position toward the whole changes as one moves around the mountain. The further trick is to avoid seeing the mountain as a thing, but rather as a whole composed of parts, such as trees and slopes, which is also part of a larger whole, a mountain range with parts and so on. This doesn't dispose of some notion of truth, but it does suggest the limits of our ability to ever grasp it fully. What happens if we look at everything happening around us from a different angle and adopt a different apparatus than might usually be the case, and one that's more suitable to the analysis of uncertainty? And what are the implications of this for the social sciences? Now, why do this? Einstein made the point that you can't address problems with the same mindset that created them. Social scientific tools of analysis have tended to emphasize rational action, prediction, explanation, generalizability, and control. But my own field, international relations, has more often than not been blindsided by change, from the end of the Cold War to the attacks on 11 September 2001, to more recently extreme weather events and the pandemic. So the key issue here is one of uncertainty. How do we study it? What does it mean to act or analyze in conditions of radical uncertainty? Now, Alexander Wendt argues that social scientists remain indebted to the assumptions of classical Newtonian physics, including atomism, locality, determinism, and mechanism, which suggests a world of distinct material things. Quantum science, by contrast, highlights the importance of consciousness, indeterminism, nonlinearity, complementarity, and entanglement. Now, the social sciences haven't been quick to embrace quantum theory. There's been a lot of skepticism, particularly about what this has to do with the social sciences, not least because quantum effects are said to wash out at above the microscopic level. So the jump from saying something about the activity of subatomic particles, which is the preoccupation of quantum physicists, to saying anything meaningful about the kinds of social and political problems humans presently face, is a quantum leap. Buddhism and Daoism provide a reservoir of knowledge developed over millennia related to questions of mind, action, and strategy in conditions of uncertainty, which provide food for thought. So the book asks how conceptions of human mind, action, and strategy change if we shift away from assumptions grounded in Newtonian physics to those of quantum impermanence, complementarity, and entanglement. Now, the parallel makes it possible to address a further problem, and that is that approaches that build on systems of thought beyond the West are often dismissed, among others because they're associated with culture, and thus assumed to have little to say about the universal truth of science. The parallel between quantum physics and Taoism and Buddhism challenges and destabilizes this science-culture binary, thereby expanding the potentials to think more globally and hopefully reimagine who we are as a planet and how to navigate the potentials of the post-pandemic world. Now, one of the most famous books about the parallel was Fritjof Capra's book, The Tao of Physics, published in the 70s. And he draws a parallel between quantum science and Eastern mysticism, which isn't very useful if the purpose is to understand human practice in the world. Mysticism takes us out of the world rather than situating humans and non-human life as actors within it. The father of the Copenhagen school, Niels Bohr, used the parallel to Buddhism and Daoism to instead point to the potential relevance of quantum theory for other domains of experience and for humans as observers and actors in the world. The German physicist Werner Heisenberg also claimed that he began to better understand quantum physics as a result of his discussions with the Indian poet and philosopher Rabindranath Tagore, and that it couldn't be all that crazy if an entire culture was based on it. So Bohr and Heisenberg acquired insights into quantum physics through observations of human lives. Now, the central philosophical problem that is posed by quantum mechanics is whether a notion of reality defined in terms of essential real constituents of matter is tenable. The concept of emptiness in Buddhist philosophy or of the Tao in Daoism provides a model for understanding a reality that's non-essentialist and applicable from the subatomic to the human and non-human life. Classical physics starts with the world of things and machines. Quantum theory instead looks for relations which are always changing and unfolding. Now, in 1961, the Belgian physicist Leon Rosenfeld asked the Japanese physicist Yukawa whether Japanese physicists had the same difficulty as their Western counterparts with Bohr's idea of quantum complementarity. And he answered no. Bohr's argumentation has always appeared quite evident to us. You see, we in Japan have not been corrupted by Aristotle. And here Yukawa is referring to Aristotle's law of non-contradiction, which states that two sides of an opposition cannot both be true. Contradiction is a relationship of either or. Complementarity and yin-yang express a relationship between opposites that are at one and the same time mutually exclusive and thus can't be seen at the same time, yet mutually implicated or entangled. With quantum complementarity, measuring one part of a pair, such as the position of an electron, makes it impossible to measure the other, its momentum, at the same time, yet both are necessary for a more complete understanding of the object of study. Complementarity and Taoist yin-yang highlight the difficulty of observing opposites in motion at the same time. As such, the entangled relationship, whether wave and particle or human in nature, is in the first instance between the non-present and unseen and the present and seen, which is a co-creative relationship of continuous motion. Taoist philosophy sees yin-yang as a generative force in the world from which its diversity emerges. Now, this orientation to the world has implications for understanding, for instance, the human place in the environment. Over the last few centuries, it's been assumed that nature is therefore appropriation to be controlled by humans. Ideas of human dominion over nature have contributed to the development of the Anthropocene and the almost complete control of nature by humans. However, the opposite is actually the case. We're losing control with climate change. The Tao Te Ching states that to try to control is to lose control. So Taoism resituates humans and their artifacts within nature. It relies on a parity of being and a notion of actionless action, or wu wai. To say that action is actionless is not to equate it with inaction or passivity, as might be assumed. A focus on inaction or passivity ignores the dynamic nature of yin-yang or complementarity. Action that is actionless is attuned to the larger environment of which it's part, rather than separate from it, and is able to navigate the potentials, both seen and unseen, with minimal effort and to maximum effect. Navigating an uncertain landscape to act effortlessly involves a certain kind of intelligence that begins with emptying the mind. If your head is full of narratives about the self, whether fears and desires, or how to best fulfill your self-interest, you aren't going to hear what's going on around you. So actionless action is about moving with and within the environment, seeing and knowing, rather than imposing linear narratives in your head onto a reality that may not match them. So if humans are part of nature rather than standing above and controlling it, their technology should also work with nature rather than destroying it. If we are a part of nature, there's also a danger that in destroying a habitat of which we are a part, or allowing human intelligence to be appropriated by machines, we also destroy ourselves. So too great of an imbalance in one direction will result in a dramatic reversal to the opposite, which is one way of thinking about the current volatility of weather events. Now, some of these themes are also evident in Sun Tzu's Art of War, which I won't go into just except briefly to say, he talks about the importance of obtaining a more complete view, including the seen and unseen of a context in order to navigate its opposing potentials, but also to the end of impacting on what is seen and unseen by an enemy, or the Tao of deception, to the end of avoiding war altogether if possible, which is the highest objective. So the objective should be to outwit the enemy, not to destroy them. If reality is relational and we are entangled in destroying you, I also destroy myself. Now, strategy isn't the same as science. The English translation of Sun Tzu's book is called The Art of War, rather than The Science of War. However, given the Taoist underpinnings, a more complementary notion of art science is arguably more accurate. The quantum idea that the observer is entangled with the apparatus of observation suggests less a distinction between practice in the world and science of the world. Wang Yiwai, who's a scholar of IR, has argued that international relations should be approached as both science and art, as three-dimensional, including time, space, and life force are key within a diverse global space. So art science shifts emphasis from the parts to the system, which takes into account all possible influences and seeks a more complete view of seen and unseen potentials. Art science involves dialectical and correlative thinking, which harks back to an ancient philosophy of cosmic resonance, or Ganying, that stimulating one thing in the universe creates a simultaneous response in other objects or people due to the interrelatedness of all things. Ganying is a stimulus-response mechanism which relies on a notion of resonance, like the resonating strings of a zither, rather than spiritualism or an angry creator. So the mechanism is also said to work at all levels of relationship, including government, and the relationship between government and people. So rather than moving from abstract hypothesis to a comparison or test with facts in the world, art science, or what Roger Amos refers to as ars contextualis, starts with the human experience in context as part of the making of persons, a community, and the world, and from this concrete detail identifies complex patterns of relatedness. Now, a shift to art science requires a rethinking of thinking. Scottish psychiatrist Ian McGilchrist argues that the two sides of the brain focus attention in different ways. The left side focuses on things, the acquisition of things and power, relies on great detail but also abstraction, and is linked to a history of modern empire. The right brain, by contrast, is more expansive, intuitive, and provides a more complete picture, like quantum physics, and is thus the rightful master, even though we tend to assume that the left brain is the master. He claims that we live in a left brain world, and this is leading us to self-destruction. So we need a more complete view which will open up potentials for more expansive thinking and a more sustainable future. So Daoism, or quantum social science, quantum social theory as art science, shifts the emphasis from the analysis of substance and essence to the world, in a world, to entangled relationality, from science as observation of a static law-like reality that's independent of us, to the continuing unfolding presence-non-presence relationship and the need for a more complete view where potentials, including ethical and emotional potentials, are as important as the material. Acknowledgement of the importance of resonance builds a bridge between the social and the natural sciences and goes beyond the science-mysticism binary that has made it so difficult to take the study of quantum consciousness seriously. So since this is a panel and a conference on artificial intelligence, I will just end with one note about the tension between the human potentials suggested by quantum Taoism. Quantum consciousness is considered to be one of the most controversial debates in physics. As I just suggested, attempts to look at quantum consciousness in human beings have been quickly derided as New Age mysticism, which has also been associated with Asian philosophies. Yet there is an explosion of interest in artificial intelligence or the simulation of human intelligence in machines, including the potential for machines that express emotions. I just want to end by questioning whether this willingness to embrace machines and discount human consciousness is not itself an artifact of Newtonian thinking, which leads us to a very different relationship to nature and the world than quantum Daoism. Thank you very much.